You are listening to Radio Bilingüe on WBFO FM HD3 Buffalo, powered by Sin Fronteras Western New York and presented by Batavia Downs Gaming and Hotel. More information at bataviadownsgaming.com. Sin Fronteras Western New York, Buffalo's media platform for Western New York Hispanics,
producing bicultural content that informs, entertains, and inspires the forward thinking.
Sin Fronteras Western New York, delivering bilingual stories,
hot topic conversations,
and the voices from our Latino community.
Sin Fronteras Western New York,
la única producción contemporánea en español
y en inglés en la ciudad de Buffalo. Sin Fronteras Western New York,
your connection to cultural ties in Latin America
and hyperlocal news in the Western New York area.
Sin Fronteras Western New York es para ti.
Dinorah.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Do you like? I think you're a sports mind. You like sports. You're a sports fan, right?
Well, yeah. I actually I played softball since I was 9 years old.
Well, there you go.
And I was played sports my whole life. Well, not as now at my age, but I grew up playing sports.
Now, did you watch sports? Did you watch the Olympics this year?
Yes, bits and pieces of it. I didn't grow up watching sports. Just wasn't. I wanted to play it. I couldn't sit there and just watch it.
Well, we were merely bystanders this summer.
Yes.
But this person that we're going to introduce now, that's going to be on with us, has been in the arena. She has been there.
Mm-hmm.
She's seen the Olympics firsthand. She's felt and smelled the chlorine in the pool.
Yes.
It's a great honor today because, like I said, as we're coming up to the studio, it's not every day you get to talk to an Olympian.
Yeah.
And today we have the pleasure of speaking to Kristen Romano. She is a Olympic swimmer. I have to put
a Latina
Olympic swimmer representing La Isla del Encanto,
yes.
Puerto Rico, in this last 2024 Olympic Games. But Kristen, welcome. Thank you for joining us on Sin Fronteras.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And to be very clear, La Isla del Encanto, no La Isla del Basuro.
Oh, yes.
There we go.
Be clear about that.
Very timely. I love it. Thank you for that. Yes. La Isla del Encanto. Put some respect on that island's name. Kristen, like we were saying, you're an Olympic swimmer. You swam for the national team of Puerto Rico, but you're local. You're a local girl.
Yeah.
Lancaster, New York, to be exact.
So tell us a little bit about where you grew up, school you went to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up, like you said, in Lancaster, New York, about 20 minutes from the studio here. I went to Lancaster High School. I actually ended up transferring my junior year of high school. There's a club that I really wanted to work with. I got a lot of family out east in New York City, Long Island area. So my junior year of high school, I went down there, lived with my tío, my godfather down there in Oyster Bay on Long Island, and I trained with the Long Island Aquatic Club for a couple
Strong
of years.
Island, I hear it's called.
Strong Island, yes. Strong Island Aquatic Club down there. And I ended up graduating from high school, from Long Beach High School down there as well, before heading off to college.
And you can't evade the nationality, the ethnicity, the hispanidad within. You are Puerto Rican on your mom's side, correct?
I am, yes. So, like I said, my tío, my mom, a lot of my family is in the States now, but yeah, Isla del Encanto, hasta la alma.
You got the right flair. You could tell those that have been around Spanish speakers and
Yes.
been and living in a Spanish environment, because your Spanish is it's you can tell it's authentic. Take us back to the beginning of this whole adventure. We're gonna get to like the peaks of your aquatic athletic journey, but when was the first time that you said, I love being in the water? Your earliest memory of just being at home in the water.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was telling you guys earlier before the show started, my brother is getting married this weekend. I'm really close with my older brother. His name is Gabriel. He's 5 years older than me.
Congrats, Gabe.
Yeah. Shout out, Gabe. Gabe and Katie. No, so everything, I mean, when you have an older sibling, I think a lot of people can relate that when you're growing up and you have this older sibling, everything they do is the coolest thing ever. And that was the same situation for me and Gabe. So when Gabe started swimming, I was about 3 years old, so he was about 8 years old at the time. And we did a lot of sports growing up. My mom played volleyball, basketball, I want to say handball as well. My dad played football, basketball. They were lifelong sports people as well. To their dismay, my brother and I did not pick up those sports. But so my brother and I did play a lot of different sports growing up. So swimming, soccer, softball. My brother did play some baseball. But eventually, you know, we kind of both gravitated towards swimming. But taking you all the way back to that first moment in the pool, Gabe started swimming at about 8 years old, and we would always go to the pool. And I was so young at that point that my mom obviously had to take me along with her. And we'd be at the pool, and he'd be practicing, and I would bug everybody. I would say, Mom, I want to be in the pool. I want to be in the pool. She'd say, no, not yet. Like, maybe in a couple of years. You're too young yet. So I would run out on the pool deck, and I would, you know, tug on the coach's shirt, and I'd say, I want to be in the pool. Put me in the pool. And they'd say, no, you know, you're not old enough yet. You can't try out yet. You're just a little too young. And so it would be weeks and weeks of me just being a terror, just annoying everybody, until one day the coach looked at my mom, and I kid you not, he looked at my mom and he said, maybe if we put her in the water, she will shut up. And that is exactly what
Just
ended
give her
up
what
happening.
she wants and then
Yeah.
see if she's still badgering you about it.
Yes, exactly. And so the story goes that the first time I got in the pool, at 3 years old, I swam from one end to the other, no problem.
No
Oh my
floaties, no
goodness.
nothing.
No floaties, no nothing.
Get out of here.
That's how the story goes.
Look, I tried out. I thought I was this athlete in high school, and I tried out for swimming, and halfway down, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna
Doggy
die.
paddling.
I'm gonna
Just trying
die.
to-
I'm going to drown." Wow.
Yeah, so that's what I tell people, that it was literally like love from the first lap.
Yeah. So was there a lot of competition between you and your brother?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
Who's the better one? Who's the better
Well,
swimmer?
Come
Well,
on.
I want her to say it. I know Gabe's getting married, but I want her to do some flaunting.
Yes, we want to hear it.
Okay. So Gabe, my brother, he ended up swimming in college. He swam at Penn State Barron.
We are.
We are, yes, we are. I will say that. Actually, you might want to edit that out. I can't be caught saying that. I think. I will say we are for him because I'm his biggest fan always. But he did swim competitively in college. He is, and I tell people this all the time, he's the smartest person I've ever met in my entire life. He's a mechanical engineer, still based
Goodness.
out of Buffalo, still lives in Buffalo. But he was a mechanical engineer in college, studying that in college. And so just the major, and I think that's Division 3, that campus is Division 3. So it just kind of got to be too much swimming in college with his major. And so I think he ended up swimming maybe a season or two at Penn State Barron. But I'm not going to say whether or not I'm a better swimmer than him. I will just say that he was always my biggest inspiration, and just chasing him from the
Yeah.
time I was, 3 years old, wanting to get in the pool.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be here if it weren't for him.
Well,
That's so sweet.
It's your sibling.
You're such a good
pushes
sister.
you to new lengths. It seemed like it was a very competitive household,
Yeah.
which is
Oh, absolutely.
and given what you ended up doing, I think that's ultimately you want that person to push you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it just you two?
It is just us
Okay.
two, yeah.
And Kristen, you talked about your first early introduction to the world of swimming, but then you went on to go, as we mentioned, one way or another, you went to the Ohio State, where you excelled in aquatic championships and competitions there. You then went on your first international games, I guess, were the Caribbean Games in Barranquilla, Colombia.
Yes.
And that's where you represented Team Puerto Rico. How did it go from? We'll talk about the collegiate portion of it a little bit later, but you found your love in swimming, and then you're going through college, you're studying as well at the same time, but then all of a sudden you get tapped for international competition. How did that process go?
So it was, growing up, I represented the U.S. Like up until I was about 16 or 17, we didn't even know that it was possible because, I was born and raised in Lancaster. It was always something, though, that I was like, man, like I wish that I could kind of marry my love for this culture, this Puerto Rican culture, this, mi raíces that I grew up just kind of admiring and loving. And, the language, the food, going to abuela's house and getting, pastelón and pastelillo and all that. Like growing up, I was like, I love being Puerto Rican. Like I love that
Yeah.
part of my identity. And it would be so cool if I could marry that part of my identity with, my love for swimming. And we didn't really know that it was possible. until I want to say it was the end of my senior year, kind of going into that freshman year of college. We got a call from, his name is Fernando Olivero. He still works in the Olympic Committee, the Puerto Rican Olympic Committee. Still, every time I go to the island, I give him a call. I see him. Just a wonderful, wonderful person. He kind of heard through the grapevine that, you know, at this point I had done some really good things in swimming already. I had was just outside like making the U.S. junior national team. I had made like select camps and things like that. I still hold state records in the state of New York, things like that. So I had some success in the sport already. And he somehow got my information from some of my cousins still live on the island, and they work in the music industry. So they're pretty well connected. Mm-hmm. And they heard through the grapevine that I was Puerto Rican and that I was a swimmer, and that, so Fernando Olivero ended up calling my mother and saying, hey, listen, we'd love to have Kristen down to the island. We would love to have her, represent us. And that was like what changed everything. Yeah. It was like suddenly like our prayers were answered. Wow. And that, I finally had this opportunity to marry those two loves that I had for my culture, my identity, and swimming as well. And so I got that call and I went down to Puerto Rico for the first time for this qualifying meet. We had a competition in Mayagüez that's on like kind of west on the island. Mm-hmm. I had my first meet, and that was really like where it all kind of started. And at that meet, I ended up qualifying for Central American Caribbean Games. And there I was able to, to this day, that was probably one of my favorite selections, my favorite international selections. It was my first one, but some of the friends that I made on that trip to this day, Jessiel Morales, who went with me to Paris, I met him for the first time on that trip. We went to that competition together. One of my best friends, Salimar Guzman, still like a sister to me. Over COVID, I lived with her for 3 months. To this day, I just saw her a couple weeks ago on the island, actually. Marisa Lugo, people like this that, like, to this day are some of my best friends that I met on that first selection, and like we'll be lifelong friends.
That's beautiful.
So you've been battling. Well, I would say the trenches, but more like lanes.
Yeah.
It's so you get that camaraderie. Yes, there's a lot of to me, from what I've gathered, the sport of swimming is so rigorous. Yes. Dinorah was talking about her experiences with swimming. I've tried. I go to my local aquatic center, just do my laps, but that's just to keep somewhat in shape. And I am not good in the slightest. My backstroke, all of them, I can float in the water really well on my back, but besides that, it's a struggle. But in our house, I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and the two sports that they really were dead set on during these Olympic Games were, of course, gymnastics and swimming. So I was like, yeah, please, that's a sport that you should gravitate to, because we'll get to my concerns with collegiate sports and the pipeline into the Olympics after, but I guess I say that to say that you've spent how many years now competing in aquatics?
20 plus years.
There you go. It's a almost lifelong pursuit.
Wow.
I'm not going to ask your age, do the math, but you seem rather young, and it's been a life of swimming. So meeting those friends, getting those connections, I got to imagine it's because you're in it together.
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, and I wouldn't change a thing. Just the lessons. Sport in general teaches you so many life lessons and gives you so many skills, especially when you go on to, get your job, which, I still haven't grown up yet. I'm still holding off on growing up.
Yeah, spoiler alert. We're all still growing up.
I agree about the sports teaching you lessons. And I remember when I first started playing softball, I was on a team that always lost. But just losing teaches you, like, you have to learn to lose.
Failure is feedback. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
And working with a team, which at work, that's important.
Yes.
But how proud does your family feel that you, especially like your mom and your family back in Puerto Rico, like they can say like, my mom, my daughter, always. Yes. So I can imagine your mom and your dad just, my daughter's an Olympian, or she goes back home and you have family. Like, how is that feeling being the daughter and being able to represent your family? Not just Puerto Rico, but your family.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't even put into words what that is like. I have been so, so blessed in my life. Like I said, those connections that I've made, I have the most amazing support system in the whole world. And I will shout it at the top of my lungs. Whether it's people that I swam with on Team Puerto Rico, people that I swam with in college, people that I swam with in high school, friends from college that were not athletes, cousins, aunts, uncles, second cousin, third, like I cannot even put into words how grateful I am for the support system that I have. I actually, when you're talking about that, my family in Puerto Rico, I think that it's easy for a lot of Puerto Ricans that, you know, don't live on the island or were raised off the island. It's easy to feel like you're separate in a way, that you're othered in a way, because, you know, maybe you don't have some of the same experiences. Maybe you don't speak Spanish. Maybe you don't speak Spanish that well. I had an interview recently that it was before the Olympics, and I try to do all of my media in Spanish, especially like if I'm shooting for, you know, Coca-Cola Puerto Rico, or I'm shooting for T-Mobile Puerto Rico. I'm going to do all my interviews and stuff in Spanish because, you know, my Spanish isn't perfect, but I try, and I want to try. That's important to me, that I try and do that. And I had an interview, and it was a long day. It was, you know, media, social media stuff, videos, interviews, news, just everything. And the day ended up being 4 or 6 hours of just doing that, right?
Man.
And so at one point, it's like your brain kind of gets all boggled and doing all this media. And I forget which organization this particular interview was for, but it was published on social media. And somebody commented something to the effect of que enseñan a nuestra atleta a hablar español desde chiquito.
You went into the comment section. That was your first problem.
Well, yeah, somebody had actually sent it to me.
Oh.
Because one of I think she's my second or third cousin on the island. She comments back and she says, like, at least she's trying, something to the effect of, she is trying. I would like to see you try
to be an Olympic.
to do what she does, but to also, you know, have an interview that, you know, Spanish was not my first language. You know, growing up in Lancaster, my dad didn't speak any Spanish at all. Not ni una palabra.
Your father not Hispanic.
Not my dad is not Hispanic at all. Lo más gringo. If I'm being honest. But, you know, and stuff like that, where, you know, that's my support system. That's not somebody who I see, you know, every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, you know, and standing up for me like that, just, I have the best support system. And, you know, talking about my dad too, my dad actually, he passed away a few years ago from cancer.
So sorry.
But I mean, and that's I could do a whole nother podcast on just the impacts that, you know, my dad had on me in my career, and the sacrifices that he made over and over. Same with my mom, over and over again, to get me to the place that I'm at today. Like I said, he was the least Puerto Rican person you will ever meet. Not even a single word of Spanish. But you better believe that on the pool deck in Barranquilla, he was screaming at the top of his lungs, "Let's go, Puerto Rico." He was the most proud Boricua, non-Boricua.
I was going to say, he was
Puerto Rican by association.
Yes, exactly. And I would be nowhere without him and the lessons that he taught me, and just so grateful again for everything that, you know, my circle has really done for me.
And I know the training, even the competitive training, can take an impact on your life and your family, like your parents, in that time that it takes to support you. What goes into international competitive swimming, that training? Yeah,
lots of years spent away from family. Lots of sacrifices, personal sacrifices, and lots of sacrifices made by the people that, you know, you love, and the people that love you, you know. So for my parents, a lot of the time that meant getting in the car and driving hours each way. Let's say I have a competition that's, you know, 4 hours away. They'll drive 4 hours down there for me to swim for 30 seconds, get in the car and drive back.
Come right back.
And not once did they ever complain about it. And not everybody has that experience. And I can't even put into words how grateful I am, and I wouldn't be here without that, right? And, you know, even friends, family members, my boyfriend is a swimmer as well. He is Sri Lankan. He's from Sri Lanka, and he lives in Sri Lanka. And he's also a swimmer. And so in terms of that relationship, like the amount of sacrifices that we make on a daily basis to be able to pursue the sport that we love, and again, time away from each other and things like that. But I mean, todo se vale la pena.
Yeah.
I'll definitely say.
Yeah.
And you said it. It's a lot of early meets. Yeah. It's a lot of solitary training too. You're just in the water. One thing I like about the idea of swimming is just, it's very, when it's not an aggressive competitive race, it's very calming. I don't know about you, but I feel like being in the water has that effect. But if you're not doing medley, I assume you're basically just doing laps on your own. You got a coach, but it's a solitary existence sometimes.
It can be. And there's just, swimming has so many layers, right? Because it's technically, it can be a team sport, right? In college, it's absolutely a team sport. But when it comes down to it, it's really individual, right? Unless you're doing relays, unless you're, competing at a college meet, unless you're competing as Team Puerto Rico at Central American Caribbean Games. But it's when you're in the water and you're looking at the black line and your face is in the water, it's shoulders up. Like the biggest or the most difficult part of swimming is that it's so mental, right? And they say that the mind gives up before the body, but in swimming, like, it is so physically demanding and so mentally demanding that, you need to make sure that you have everything in check, really, to be at your best. And that's something I've had to learn throughout college. I struggled with depression. I struggled with, disordered eating. I struggled with all of these things that you don't really hear about maybe that often, but I guarantee you that, over 50% of college athletes have struggled with at least one or two of those things.
I mean, you hear the other big names in Olympic sports. Simone Biles
exactly
had to. They call it one thing or another. The yips in baseball, in twisties in gymnastics. Thank you.
Right.
It's all sports.
Right.
You have to be mentally sound, and in swimming, I think it's another level of that. But thank you for taking us into that world, because I got to imagine it's taxing physically and mentally.
Yes.
So. We're speaking to Kristen Romano. She is a decorated 7-time medalist, right?
I believe so. 7-time international medalist. Yeah.
7 international medals. Nothing to laugh about there. That's impressive.
Yeah, I think so.
That's
Not
insanely impressive.
Points,
And you went to Ohio State, the Ohio State. When we talk about the rigors of being a student athlete, you're splitting up your time between your athletic pursuits, but also your academic ones. You're currently a dual degree graduate. You've got an anthropological and political science degree. First off, what drove you to those two?
My dad used to like to say that, he said this on my graduation night, actually. He said, "Congratulations, that's so exciting. Now you're really, really qualified to wait tables."
He said it, not me. I have a journalism degree, but I can't. Who am I to say anything?
Well, no, originally I came in pre-law for my undergraduate degree. And I really wanted to go to law school originally. And so political science was kind of the original goal there. And I ended up taking a few anthropology classes, which anthropology is kind of a bit of everything, right?
I minored in anthropology too, so I got you. I'm right there with you.
So you get it. But it's like cultural, it's linguistic, it's archaeological,
That's
it's
how
history.
we got here. It's seeing the past and through the lens of its people.
Right.
As opposed to history, where it's just the big events and what happened.
Right.
Anthropology looks at the culture, the sociological kind of dynamic. So it's a curious dual degree. But I'm always curious why people find the things that they are passionate about and gravitate to.
Right.
You ended up going towards more of the sports,
right?
Which I want to really dig into that. But how did you manage both of those tracks, being an athlete and being a student at the same time at a very prestigious school?
Yeah, it was very difficult. With a minor in Spanish as well.
Oh, now you're showing off.
Frankly, those routes of study, I think just they worked. They worked with how my brain was already kind of hardwired. And so it was pretty easy to kind of go on those tracks more than anything. But I will say it was very, very difficult. And I took my 5th year. So because of COVID, student athletes had the option to kind of take that 5th year of eligibility. And it just ended up working out that I could get the 2 degrees and the minor and just kind of fit it all in there. But a lot of what I was talking about earlier with the sacrifices, not getting to see friends, not getting to see family, time sacrifice, not getting to, have that normal college experience a lot of times. Sometimes that meant, your Saturday night, 10 p.m., you're not, out of the club with your friends, you're at home writing a paper. And that was just kind of something that I grew up knowing. Like I grew up and I was lucky enough to have parents that kind of drilled that into me, that, you know, swimming's not going to be forever, that, you know, it's important that you really put time into those things that are important to you, that those things that are significant to you. And to me, that was getting a good education. And I worked really hard in high school as well. I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to go to Ohio State. And one thing that I knew that I wanted to be able to do was make sure that my parents didn't have to worry about me going to school. Yeah. That I worked hard enough academically, athletically, that, you know, I would be taken care of, and that they wouldn't have to worry about that because of all those sacrifices that they had already made for me. And so I felt it was only right, you know, as soon as I got to school, to pay that forward as much as I could. But yes, a lot of late night studying where maybe I wish I was out doing something else. But again, todo se vale la pena.
It definitely seems like a lot of pressure.
Yes.
And I know you mentioned that you did experience some mental health issues.
Yes, yeah.
Were there supports, and what did you do during that period of time? Because it didn't seem like you could just take a break.
Right. Yeah. I think I was lucky enough at Ohio State to have a lot of really good resources. They had therapists on staff. They had, you know, people that you could go to when you were kind of feeling that need and you were kind of struggling with those mental challenges. And I was lucky enough to be able to kind of connect with those resources. But again, that was something that I also leaned on my teammates for. A lot of them were kind of going through the same things, and just being able to kind of look at each other and say, like, I see you. I know what you're going through, and connect in that way. Just knowing that you're not alone in that is so, so important.
Absolutely.
And you're still in the world of competitive swimming. You're still training in Knoxville.
Yes.
And now you're also doing that. You're a glutton for punishment, it seems like, because you're doing that and you're still going for your master's in sports management
She
and
didn't have
sports
enough.
law. Yeah, leave some degrees for the rest of us, Kristen, please. No. But how has your training kind of evolved since then, and balancing both a professional swimming career and now graduate studies again? How has that prepared you for the life that you're currently leading?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny. I was just talking to some friends over the weekend that, you know, teammates that I swam with at Ohio State that I hadn't seen in maybe a year or two, but, you know, there's always the, you know, how are you doing? What's new? And it's so funny. And it's so funny because I tell them, you know, I'm swimming and going to school still. Like, same thing I was doing 5 years ago. But you know what? It's, as much as it's the same thing I was doing 5 years ago, it's completely different, right? When you make that transition from a collegiate athlete to a professional athlete, it's not, you know, it's easy to go to practice one day when you're an undergraduate and because your coach is telling you to, right? When you're a professional athlete, the only person you really have to check you is you. So you have to hold yourself accountable. I mean, even more than you would. Athletes have discipline. Athletes hold themselves accountable. Professional athletes, they have to do that to another level. And the same goes with school, right? When you're an undergrad, my master's program is completely online. So I'm not going into a physical class where a professor is saying, you know, do this, do this, do this. So there's just a lot of accountability that I'm putting on myself. Yeah. But I couldn't ask for a better way to prepare myself for life after swimming. Like when I finally make that transition to hopefully sport agency or sport marketing, those are some really great qualities that I'm hoping that an organization will really appreciate. That's not to say that's not without difficulty. There are definitely those days where I wake up and I'm like, I really don't want to go to practice today. I really don't want to study today.
I don't want to get in that cold pool.
Right. Right. And if any swimmer says that they love getting up at 5:30 in the morning and diving into a cold pool every day, they're lying. They're absolutely lying.
So what are you majoring in now what's your master's in?
Yeah, so my master's is in sport management with a specialization in sport law. So that's kind of towards that sport agency, sport marketing end, I'm hoping.
The business of sports.
The business of sports, exactly. Yes.
And it doesn't get any bigger than the business of Olympic sport.
Right.
So we tiptoed around it, but let's go to Paris. Let's go to Paris 2024. Yeah. You were at the Olympic Games. How was it just being there? Had you been to Paris before? Was that a first for you, or how was that whole experience? Because take me through all that.
Yeah, that experience was so many things, good, bad, ugly. There was just so much wrapped up in that experience. I had never been to Paris before, so this was the first. I had never been to Europe. I've gone to I've had the opportunity to be, you know, lucky enough to go to a lot of international competitions, world championships, Central American Caribbean Games, things of that nature. but nothing really in Europe. You know, the closest I'd probably been was Budapest, Hungary. So just going to Paris in itself was so exciting for me. And getting there, just getting off of the plane and seeing the Eiffel Tower, seeing the Seine, all of these sites that I had just, not even in swimming, just in as a person, just dreamed of going. I think everybody just kind of, you know, the City of Lights and all of that. It was overwhelming in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways, it was something that I had seen before. So at other competitions like World Championships, you know, you walk into the pool and it's in the middle of a stadium, or, you know, you walk into a pool and it's got a pretty similar format. The pool's going to look the same. The lane lines are going to be the same distance apart. The starting blocks are going to look the same. Those things were kind of a comfort to me, I would say, at the games, because, you know, okay, it's just a pool, right? It's water, it's starting blocks, it's a pool deck. Those
same dimensions.
Yes,
you got it.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was a really big comfort to me, and that was exciting. That got me kind of ready to race, and it didn't leave me with a ton of nerves to race, because I've just, at this point in my career, I've raced so many times and I've had the opportunity to go to so many high level meets that I think more than anything, I got there and I was like, okay, it's time to show out. Like it's time. So that was really exciting. The things that I would say were maybe challenges, you know, on the transportation on the way to the pool wasn't always, you know, super well lined up, or, you know, there was the thing with the air conditioning.
Yeah, there was protests too in the first few days that kind of made things difficult for the athletes.
Yes, definitely. But, you know, at this point, I can say as an Olympic athlete now, you kind of deal with, you know, little challenges like this, maybe not to that scale because it is an Olympic Games. So everything's kind of just one level up. But, you know, having prior experiences that kind of ground you really help make those challenges seem kind of small.
So the lights were bright. The stage was none bigger, but you were locked in. And, and so then how many races, how many competitions were you part of?
So I only got to race one time while I was there. So I ended up just qualifying in the 200 IM. And the way that they swim events at the Olympic Games, you'll have a preliminary swim. So that'll be kind of everybody that qualified. The top 16 from that preliminary swim will go to a semifinal that evening. And then the following day, they will swim the final, which will be just the top 8 that were taken from those top 16, if that makes any sense. So I was 21st overall in the 200 IM. I had actually gotten really, really sick before the race. A lot of the village was actually getting very sick.
I was going to say, like, usually there's a bug that comes into the village, and and the village is the village.
Yes. That's what you guys call it?
The Olympic Village. That's where all the athletes stay and are based. And how was that experience of just seeing so many athletes, seeing peers, seeing competitors? How was that environment?
Yeah, it was
other than the viral bugs.
It was COVID. I'm telling you, COVID was going around, and everybody was like, "What's going on here?"
Even Olympians get it.
Yes, especially Olympians, it seems.
Even with the cardboard beds.
Yes. The cardboard beds were. I will say the cardboard beds were actually very comfortable. I will say. But yeah, the village was, the first couple of days I was really overwhelmed just with the size and just the amount of athletes that were there. I would say I wasn't, again, I've had the opportunity to go to competitions where I'm with, you know, I've swam at competitions with Michael Phelps there. I've swam with, you know,
amazing
Caleb Dressel, Katie Ledecky. I've seen them at competitions. So in a way you have to kind of steel yourself and be, you know, professional, and, you know, I'm here for like business. I'm an athlete. I'm here for business, right? There were a couple of people in the village that I saw, and I did fangirl a little bit to myself. Alana Maher, Suni Lee, I saw. This is probably one of my favorite stories to tell from Paris, actually. So we're lining up for Olympic ceremonies, and, you know, the way that athletes get to Olympic ceremonies is they will have all their country gear on. Each country will kind of be in a line. We'll get on buses. We'll head to the location. In this case, we got on buses and, you know, loaded up on the boats that we took.
I was going to say that this is a special Olympic procession because it was the first, like, an aquatic one. I thought, super cool.
Yeah, it was very, very cool. A little wet, but but very cool. But so we're lining up all of the countries to get on the buses to go to the boats, and I'm kind of toward the front of the line of Puerto Rico, and, you know, a couple countries are around us, whatever, and I hear squealing behind me, like squealing like that. And I was like, what is going on? And I look behind me, and LeBron James is walking down the.
I was wondering if it was going to be someone to that level, and
Yeah.
it was King James.
Yeah, so King James and, the whole men's basketball team, they're walking down. They've got, armed guards with them. And the screams, it turns out, were the Team Puerto Rico guys just squealing and saying, "Oh my God, LeBron, te quiero, LeBron!" They're squealing at the top of their lungs. I was expecting, like, some fangirls with no.
Yeah, no, it was the guys.
Yeah, it was the guys.
That's
Love
funny.
it. Love it. Representing Puerto Rico in that moment, that's got to be like that's a pinnacle moment for you, I gotta imagine.
Do you get questions about, because there's the American team
Yes.
and Puerto Rico?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot. So Puerto Rico obviously is a territory of the U.S. Puerto Ricans are naturalized U.S. citizens, but they do have their own government. They have their own sport government as well. So it's called a National Olympic Committee, and Puerto Rico has their own National Olympic Committee with a pretty impressive resume as well. Jasmine Camacho Quinn, gold medalist in the 100-meter hurdles in Tokyo, and then Monica Puig from tennis in, I want to say it's in Rio in 2016.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so very impressive. And I was lucky enough to be, obviously at the village with Jasmine and the other track athletes and the wrestler as well. I'm forgetting his name. But
I should know this. I'm a former wrestler.
He just won bronze. Yeah.
I know my guy from Cuba, who's the heavyweight, who
was the GOAT.
A beast.
Yes.
A beast. He retired at the Paris
Yes.
Games, and my old wrestling coach used to wrestle with him, and just it's, as a sporting fan, you gotta be, it's a pinch yourself moment.
Yes.
Because you're just surrounded by
Greatness.
people at the
Yeah.
top of their sport,
Yes.
and you're just like, it's like, how did I get here? But
Yeah.
It
you said it,
inspires you.
lots of nights and days and mornings, and kudos to you, Kristen, for making it there, because that's something you tell your kids, that's something you tell your family, that's something you hold and treasure forever, I gotta imagine.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, like you said it, like there were definitely those moments when I was in the village that I was like, kind of imposter syndrome, where you're like, what am I doing here? Like I just rolled out of bed one day and I woke up in the Olympic Village. What am I doing here? But I mean, I luckily, like I said, that support system that I have. My best friend from college, she was a swimmer with me. We swam the same events. Was my roommate for all 5 years of college, which is very rare.
Yeah.
But I called her and she was like, how are you doing really? Like, how are you doing? Because I think a lot of people are just, they congratulate you and they move on,
Yeah.
right? But I think a lot of people, and especially her, like when they know you really well, like it's those deep conversations, right? They know you and they're like, how are you really doing?
Yeah,
though?
you could be
You need
your true
those. You
self.
need those people.
Right. And, we had that conversation when I remember just laying in my cardboard bed and I was on the phone with her and I was like, what am I doing here? Like, am I allowed to be here? And she was like, I totally understand what you mean. And, just kind of talk through it and things like that, where that support system really makes the big difference, kind of helping you understand and helping you through those big moments.
And are you currently still training now?
I am, yeah. This morning I worked out for about 4 hours this morning. But
Just 4 hours.
Yeah.
That's it.
What does that look
That's
like?
a light day.
4-hour training.
Normal day in the office.
Yeah.
That's a pretty light day, I would say. So, I mean, that kind of looks like this morning I did like a 2.5-hour swim and then about an hour and a half lift.
How many laps is that?
My practice was about 7,000 yards today. Yeah.
You can't see us, but our mouths are agape.
Yeah,
at
I
just
walked my dog around
I'm
the
happy if I
block.
get 10,000 steps today.
Yeah, it adds up. It's
So are you actively now training just to train, or are you training for the next Olympics?
So that is the question. 4 years is a very big commitment. So I don't want to say that I'm committed to another 4 years quite yet until I really see how the next couple years shake out. And, I'm graduating with my master's in December, just kind of seeing what maybe I want to move on. Maybe I feel like it's not time. I do have plans to go to Budapest, Hungary in December for Swimming World Championships. So I'm training for that. I've got a competition in mind. But it's, I think for a lot of swimmers and a lot of athletes, when you know that it's time to move on to start a next
Some
chapter.
think they can keep going though.
That's
when the-
LeBron is still going.
Well, he's a freak of nature. He's a rarity, but like
Tom Brady, like he,
you have
he
guys
went
that-
back. Like,
you have athletes that just extend their stay, and then you're like, all right,
okay,
yeah,
it's
it's time.
time.
It's time. But yeah,
That's where you have those key people in your life that you kind of look at them and you're like, am I too old?
Yeah.
And they look at you and they say, yeah.
you're the
It's
old
time.
person in the club, and they're like, all right, it's time to go home.
Right.
But I think you're well grounded. It seems like, and you
Yeah.
got a plan, which is in sports management.
Yes.
You want to go perhaps into an agency work. So this is now I wanted to get into this because if you've been following all the developments in collegiate sports, the biggest ones have been name, image, likeness, NIL. There's a lot of money now coming into a world that for a long time was devoid of it, of private interest and private equity, which is another component of all this. There's been a lot of rulings. There's a lot of money coming into, I would say, the big programs.
Yeah.
But now being in it, having seen it, you were in a big program yourself. You were at a Big Ten school, big Power 5 conference school, and now seeing it all, also having been now a professional athlete, having done your own fair share of commercials and seeing the business.
Yeah.
What do you see with these current changes with NIL? With I worry about Title IX too, that's being in jeopardy. But there's this expectation that athletic programs now have to make money. And how do you see coming up in the future for college sports?
No idea, honestly, and nobody has.
It's the right
idea.
answer. It's an adequate answer because no one knows.
Nobody has any idea, and so that's something that I'm actually really involved with right now is kind of this NIL and how quickly it's changing. Not just NIL in itself, but collegiate sports as a whole is just changing. I mean, every day something new comes out, and frankly, I think that the NCAA is really struggling to keep up with the changes. And I won't say whether or not I think that NIL is right for college athletics or not, because that's just that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
That there's so many things that kind of go into that. But I mean, one big example, you talk about those big schools having more access to that big funding. At Ohio State recently, Jeremiah Smith, I want to say, he just had this big NIL deal with Chipotle. And now, I'm still friends with people on the team. All student athletes at Ohio State get this little card. It looks like a credit card, and they get free Chipotle once a week. All student athletes.
Get out.
Yeah, and that's just
That's just one of the
iceberg.
perks. There's so many others that
Right.
we're not hearing.
And I think that's important because I remember in college I knew student athletes where they didn't have time to have like side jobs, and they would run out of the you get so much from like the school lunch and food. You get so much from that. And you're an athlete, so you're hungry,
Right.
and even that, just they get free Chipotle once a week.
They should be getting more than once a
more,
week.
but
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
They have their own dining hall. Yeah.
Well, that's true. Yeah, the Ohio State facilities are nothing to scoff at. My concern with all this is, I think I was kind of mentioning it, but Title IX.
Right.
Title IX has been able to fund a lot of sports, women's sports primarily.
Yes.
That let's be honest,
Yeah.
our Olympic sports, they're fringe sports, but they're sports that every 4 years we drape ourselves in the flag and we get excited for equestrian sport or badminton or what have you. All those sports that track and field that might not have the same viewership as some of the more premier sports, but we need those sports and we need those pipelines to keep if we want to be competitive on the world stage, we need those sports to continue.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think all of these changes, there are going to be multiple rippling effects from all of these changes. And so a lot of sports are going to get cut. Men's gymnastics actually is one. I have a lot of men's gymnastics friends that, a lot of these college teams are getting cut. Roster sizes are going to be reduced dramatically in almost all sports, especially swimming, because roster sizes are usually quite large. But because of, like, let's say the House legislation that just passed, or the House case rather, student athletes are going to have to start getting more money from the athletic department. And so that means, you're missing out on maybe 10 or 15 student athletes in each class or each sport that are not going to get a chance to be collegiate athletes. Interestingly enough, there is quite a big market for student athletes that are not at these big schools. If you can believe it, actually, so the highest grossing NIL athletes, if you could guess what sport, it's football.
Naturally.
The second highest grossing sport, women's basketball. Women's basketball.
The WNBA has just taken off
Yes.
in the last few years, and that's reassuring to hear that's the case in college too.
Yeah, and so some organizations, it kind of depends on what the company's goals are, really, with a campaign. There are some organizations that have made a stand. We only want to do NIL partnerships with female athletes to give them that visibility. We only want to do NIL partnerships with walk-ons, with people that are not getting scholarships because they don't have time to get a job, right? I just read about a deal recently. I'm forgetting the company name. They just signed 2 football players from 2 very, very small schools that, it wasn't the quarterback. It wasn't, big name players, but these guys weren't on scholarship. And they made it a point to sign these guys to NIL deals so that they didn't have to worry about getting a job on top of being a student athlete and all of these things. So there are organizations out there that are using this for good. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case everywhere, and there is going to be changes.
I think we're all in agreement that for a long time student athletes didn't get their fair share. And I'm going to backtrack and say I'm also on that belief. But I feel like you said it, the sport and the rules around it are changing so quickly that I think the governing body, the NCAA, is kind of having to make it up as they go along because, the NIL thing alone is just it's got so many tentacles and angles to it. I'm not gonna talk about certain programs, but there's a lot. It's a business. It was a professional business, and now it's got into the college world, and it's gonna keep evolving and changing. But I appreciate your perspective on that because you're studying it. You're gonna hopefully be engrossed in it, living in it, and you've done it yourself already. So
and you're
awesome.
So well spoken when you speak about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think your professor will be very proud.
I hope so. Yeah, let's send this to my professor, please.
Well, I guess the other thing I got some rat-a-tat-tat, real rapid fire questions. If you could do any other Olympic sport, if you can reverse time and go back to young 3-year-old Kristen and say, hey, you should do this sport instead, what would that sport be? Tennis.
I've been interested in tennis too. So why tennis?
Because they make a lot of money.
Yeah,
you don't.
Also, women's golf. A lot of scholarship money. I shouldn't be saying this as a parent of 2 girls who I'm trying to get into golf for that reason. College is expensive, people. College golf,
so,
but tennis too.
Well, we got Pagula, right?
Yes,
we got it. Yeah.
Yes. I will say though too, this was really funny. After I finished competing in Paris, I was like, should I pick up a winter sport so that I can be that
Dual
would be so
Olympian.
cool. And Puerto Rico, I think that is going to be wide open because we have a couple of actually winter Olympians actually. I think that we have a bobsledder and maybe
I was going to make the Cool Runnings joke, but here we are.
We do have a
they have a
bobsledder,
bobsled team. Puerto Rico has a bobsled team.
But curling too.
Listen, I love curling. As far as winter Olympic sports, that's the one that there's so much passion. Every athlete has that passion, but the curlers are just so the brooming so feverishly. It's just it's something to watch.
Yeah.
And there's clubs out here in our Western New York area.
Yes.
For curling.
Oh yeah, that would make sense for you to pick up a winter sport. Come on, you're from this area.
Yeah, that'd be.
There you go.
I was like, I don't know if I
Future
can learn
plans,
it.
Winter
in a
Olympic.
year.
Where are the next ones at?
I think that they're in the Alps.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I was
there we go. Are Puerto Ricans made for the Alps? That's
Some are.
the music you listen to. I remember Michael Phelps famously with his headphones every swim meet, just listening, getting in the zone. Found out it was a lot of Lil Wayne. Who is it that you listen to get you in the moment, get you ready, get you hyped up?
A lot of different people. I love music. I will literally listen to music all day long. Training, I need music. Like going to the gym, I need music. Before my race, I always need music. As long as it's something upbeat and very, I kind of gravitate towards reggaeton, trap,
Look,
lots of bad money. Let's just say it.
I didn't want to go with the stereotypical answer, but he's universally respected. So
I love, and also big shout out Eladio Carrion. He was a swimmer. Still holds national records in Puerto Rico. And he's
Wait,
huge
did you get
as
in
well.
contact with him?
Yeah, actually, he's really good friend. So the male swimmer that that went to the Olympics for Puerto Rico, they grew up together in Bayamon, and like they're great friends to this day. So
What part of Puerto Rico is your family from?
San Sebastián,
Okay.
El Campo.
My family, Ponce, my dad's side, Vega Baja.
Yeah.
So your boyfriend's in Sri Lanka. How does that? And he also is a competitive swimmer.
Yeah.
How do you the time zones, the rigorous schedules? How do you make that work?
Yeah, lots of communication, lots of trust,
FaceTime.
and he's a swimmer. He gets it. So we actually met people when I tell them that are like, where did you meet this guy?
You got to meet halfway somewhere, right?
Yeah, we went to college together. We swam at Ohio State together. So he just gets it. And we've been together. We just celebrated our 4-year anniversary. So we've been
Nice.
together for quite a while, but he just gets it, and really just being patient with it and making sure to take care of the little things. We do like a virtual date night every Thursday night, little things like that. So again,
He gets it.
Yeah.
So where do you hope to be your home base?
That is the question. He has a really great job lined up in Sri Lanka. So his dad and his younger brother are there. He has some family here in the U.S. as well. He was actually kind of similar, where he was born and raised in the U.S. and then they kind of moved back to Sri Lanka in 2009. He was there until he came to college at Ohio State. That's where we met. But he moved back 2 years ago to be there full time, to train, to be with his dad, and to kind of start taking over their family business, which is also swimming. So they own their own club team. They own a Learn to Swim program as well. So he's just kind of being starting to prepare for kind of taking over that role, and swimming is his life as well. He's honestly more of a swim nerd than anybody I know, especially me. So
I was going to ask if you're big on cricket.
I am not,
Because
also,
it seems to me if things are going the way you might end up in Sri Lanka. Cricket's huge out there.
it is huge.
You might have to be representing the stars of Sri Lankan cricket.
Well, that's the market out there. But I tried to get him into baseball because I was like, I mean, if I have to watch cricket, you have to watch baseball.
Yeah.
And I took him to a Mets game, actually.
Well, why'd you do that to him?
Not a Yankee?
Yeah, I'm a Yankees fan. We kind of a long story. We were on vacation in Florida. We ended up having a free day, and I was like, let's go see a game. He's never seen a baseball game. I think it was the team in Tampa.
Oh, the Rays.
Yeah. Tampa and the Mets. The Mets were good that year too. 6-inning no-hitter.
Ooh.
He said he fell asleep.
A no-hitter is not the best game to take him to for the first
But
one.
this is why, like, I grew up playing the sport.
Right.
I just can't sit and watch it.
Yes. He fell asleep, and we left. I got him up. I said, okay, let's go. He said, never again.
Oh.
Never again. So hopefully I'll have more luck with cricket.
Yeah. And possibly in the future,
Yeah.
kids, would they play sports?
They would be really good swimmers, I would think.
Legacies.
Yeah. I don't think my boyfriend would let them not swim. Honestly. For me, I'm I don't. If that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do, but
they won't have a
Man,
choice.
we put her on the spot. We had her already moved into
I
Sri
wasn't
Lanka with
meaning
kids.
like him, whoever it is in the future.
yeah, he's
with
even more
kids.
competitive than I am. So whatever they do, they're gonna be good at
Those
it.
poor
Yes.
hypothetical kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, if you choose it, there's no giving it halfway.
Right.
Either you do it and you do it all the way.
And
Whatever
we're
it is.
both
It
raised
could
that
be
way, too.
ballet. It could be tennis.
Right.
Do it all the way.
Yeah.
As a Latina,
Yeah.
I myself try to, I look for other Latina role models. When I'm looking for a role model, I look for somebody who looks like me, maybe speaks like me. So I know you girls are looking up to you as a role model. What does that feel like? What does that mean to you?
I got two at home that are.
That just means the world to me. And I remember when I was growing up, looking at, in 2016, Monica Puig, watching her win that, like, tears in my eyes. Jasmine Camacho Quinn, tears in my eyes. Like, and also the women that, stayed true to their roots just kind of as I did. And as I mentioned kind of earlier, growing up away from the island, it's easy to kind of feel disconnected sometimes and feel like, oh, I'm different. Maybe, I'm not Puerto Rican, or I'm not.
Yeah.
But seeing these women that maybe are raised away from the island that are succeeding on such a high level and staying true to that identity. I feel like I'm just so inspired by that. And I hope I can offer the same to, those young athletes, those young women as well. And I hope that I can kind of do right by them and just be that role model for them.
Yeah. Not to add more pressure.
Yeah, no biggie.
How do you hope to inspire the next generation of swimmers?
I think just by embracing that difference, right? Like the Lancaster High School, the high school that I went to in Lancaster, I was one of the only Latina people there. And so it was easy to really feel like I don't belong. I'm not, I know that I'm different, but that sort of thing where being true to that and embracing that. And I really preach that, just embracing that culture and embracing those differences. And also just being willing to dream big. That's the biggest piece of advice that I always give, athletes or young people. Just dream big and don't let others put limits on what you think that you can achieve, because the world is so wide and there are so many opportunities out there for you. And if you don't get this one, get the next one, right? Failure is feedback. Take those things and just on to the next,
I love it. And even with that quote, failure is feedback.
Yeah.
I love when, let's say, even for work, like, give me criticism. Tell me how I could improve it. I need to know what I did wrong or how can I do something better. If you're not telling me, or even like if I'm not, even when I was saying when I was little, I was in a team that was always losing. How would you know in what areas can you improve if you
should
just
I choke
try?
up on the bat?
Yeah.
How do I get better if not by knowing how
I didn't
I'm-
make it
what I'm
this
doing
time.
wrong?
I'll make it next time.
Yes.
Well, I think I speak for the both of us. While perhaps your 2024 Olympic campaign didn't meet the goals and aspirations, I'd say just being there is showing that, once again, there's little girls from Lancaster, Puerto Rican Hispanic girls that can do big things on a grand stage.
Yeah, from the west side of Buffalo.
And again, to that one commenter that was criticizing your Spanish, vete pa there.
Spanish was my first language,
Because
but I struggle.
We're all working through that, I think. And 7 international medals, just your career and where you're going, Kristen, I think is a testament to the work that you put in personally and into your craft. So kudos to you. I, for one, and Dinorah, I think I speak for both of us. Like, we're thrilled. Once again, we had an Olympian in our studio.
Yeah.
We get to
Do I
talk
have
to.
a marker? I want an autograph. I'm serious.
Okay, perfect.
And if people want to follow your trajectory, your career, where can they do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on social media, and I probably use Instagram the most. I try to stay off TikTok because it's like
Probably wise.
It's addictive.
I will be scrolling for hours at a time, but definitely on Instagram is probably what I use the most. And yeah, I hope that I'm making the community proud, and I work every day, and I'm determined to kind of do that. So.
Yeah. And we're so privileged to have you here.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much
Thank you,
for having
Kristen.
me.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Kristen Romano, Olympic Puerto Rican swimmer. Just a true delight to speak to her today on Sin Fronteras. Isn't that right, Dinorah?
Absolutely.